He walks into the world without a need for applause. He isn't the loudest man in the room. He doesn't dominate every conversation or scramble for every eye to be on him. In a culture obsessed with attention, he seems almost invisible. But what most people miss is this. It's the invisible ones you should fear the most. Because he doesn't chase, not people, not trends, not validation. The world is designed to reward the pursuers, those who strive, shout, and cling to whatever gives them a fleeting sense of worth. But the man who doesn't chase lives by a different law. If something must be chased, it was never meant to be kept. He doesn't move through life with his hands outstretched. He moves with them steady by his side, building something silent, a fortress of mind and will that nobody else can enter unless invited. He has learned, usually the hard way, that the more you chase, the more you teach the world to run from you. He's seen how people withdraw the moment they sense hunger behind your gaze. He's learned that the currency of approval is both cheap and expensive. Cheap for those who give it away to everyone. Expensive for those who build themselves around the need for it. So, he became rare, not because he wanted to be, but because he realized that's the only way to become irreplaceable. He's seen the cycle, the endless running, the subtle games, the hollow victories won by those who shout their worth into the void and wait for the echo to return. He's watched people betray themselves for a moment of acceptance. He's watched others shrink in the presence of those who are louder, bolder, more desperate for the spotlight. He knows how it feels to run and to be run from. And he has made a promise to himself, never again. He no longer begs. He no longer pleads for a seat at tables built on fragile egos. He builds his own table, solid, silent, unshakable. If others wish to join him, they must bring respect, not noise, value, not demands. And if they don't, he lets them pass by. No bitterness, no drama, just the calm confidence of a man who is at home in his own solitude. When you don't chase, you force the world to reveal its true intentions. People either move toward you because they see your worth, or they drift away because they only wanted to be chased. This man has chosen the first. He wants only what is drawn to him by the gravity of his presence, not what he must run after, exhaust himself for, or beg to stay. He has become dangerous, not in the way of violence or threat, but in the way of unpredictability. He cannot be manipulated by what everyone else is addicted to: attention, validation, applause. He does not starve for their eyes. He feasts on his own vision. He does not ache for their touch. He is already at home in his own skin. The man who doesn't chase knows this truth. Anything worth keeping will not ask you to abandon yourself to hold it. So he stopped abandoning himself. He stopped overreaching, stopped over-explaining, stopped justifying his silence to those who never earned his voice. He doesn't play games. He doesn't wait 3 days to text back or show interest just to withdraw it later. That's not strength, that's fear. And he doesn't operate from fear anymore. He has no desire to play the role of performer in someone else's show. He doesn't ask to be chosen, he chooses himself. And here's the paradox that makes him powerful. The moment he stopped chasing people, they started watching him, curious, confused, quietly intrigued. They don't understand why he's so calm, why he's so still, why he's so focused, when everyone else is trying so hard to be seen. Because most people were taught to survive through noise, but he survives through stillness. He's not desperate to be liked. He's not hungry for approval. He doesn't measure his worth by how many texts he gets, how many eyes look his way, or how many compliments come his direction. Because he doesn't chase love, he becomes it. He becomes the kind of man who is remembered even in absence. Not because he tried to impress, but because he refused to be ordinary. His attention isn't scattered. His energy isn't cheap. His time isn't available to those who only show up when it's convenient. He knows what most men never learn. A man's strength isn't in how loudly he demands the world see him. It's in how quietly he becomes someone the world cannot ignore. He doesn't explain his worth. He expresses it in silence, in boundaries, in purpose. You won't see him chasing a title. He's already living like the man he wants to become. And because of that, titles chase him. This man has depth, because depth is what happens when you stop performing and start reflecting. When you stop reacting and start observing. When you stop needing and start becoming. People call him intense. They don't understand how he's so steady, so unreadable, so unwilling to play the part they had scripted for him. But that's the thing. He writes his own script, and he burns the ones written by others. He doesn't chase, because chasing is the act of forgetting who you are to convince someone else of your value. And he doesn't need convincing. He knows exactly who he is, exactly what he brings, and exactly what he will no longer tolerate. When others run after noise, he runs towards silence. When others seek validation, he seeks truth. When others fight to be noticed, he fights to be better. Quietly, because the man who doesn't chase doesn't want to be seen. He wants to be real. And there is nothing more magnetic than a man who is real in a world that rewards fake. He doesn't move fast, he moves right. He's not impulsive, not reactive, not quick to speak, quick to trust, or quick to follow. He's slow, intentional, measured, because he knows that not everything that glitters is gold, and not everything that speaks truth is honest. He watches before he acts, listens before he speaks, waits before he decides. That patience unnerves people, because in a world addicted to instant gratification, a man who can wait is a man they can't control. People try to provoke him, try to pull him into their games, into their chaos, into their drama. But he doesn't bite, because he understands the cost of energy. He doesn't give his fire to small fires. He walks away more than he argues, not because he's weak, but because he refuses to fight where nothing can be won. When something disrespects his peace, he doesn't explode. He exits. No warnings, no speeches, no announcements, just distance. Because he knows the strongest boundary is absence. He doesn't block people to teach them a lesson. He simply becomes inaccessible, like a door you used to walk through, now sealed with stone. He's been through the chaos before. He's seen what happens when you chase, the self-betrayal, the overthinking, the anxiety, the regret. He remembers the sleepless nights, the over-apologies, the emotional hunger, the fear of loss. And he chose not to live there anymore. So now he protects his peace like it's sacred, because to him, it is. While the world races, he reflects. While the world shouts, he sharpens. While the world competes, he builds quietly, unbothered by the chaos, unattached to the applause. People look at him and ask, how did he become like this? The answer is simple. He suffered, and he chose to turn that suffering into structure. He was once the man who begged, who chased, who hoped, who stayed where he was no longer wanted. But that version of him died in the fire. And what came out on the other side? A man who needs no one, but is wanted by many. A man who doesn't chase, but is followed in silence. A man who could have broken, but instead became unbreakable. This kind of strength, it can't be faked, it can't be copied, and it can't be rushed. It's built in isolation, built in discipline, built in nights when the world slept and he stayed up confronting every lie he had told himself just to be liked. He used to think silence was emptiness. Now he understands. Silence is space. The space to hear his own thoughts. The space to sharpen the sword of his mind. The space to cut away every weak part of him that begged to be loved, that feared being misunderstood, that wanted to be accepted by people who didn't even accept themselves. He carved himself out of that silence, layer by layer, habit by habit, boundary by boundary. And now the silence follows him, not as a void, but as a presence. People feel it before he speaks. They sense it when he enters a room. It's not intimidation, it's clarity. You can't manipulate a man who needs nothing from you. That's the power people don't talk about. To walk away without looking back, to say no without guilt, to not chase something just because it's walking away. He doesn't chase because he knows if it leaves, it was meant to, and if it stays, it better come correct. See, the man who doesn't chase has flipped the game, not by force, but by understanding the rules better than anyone. The world taught him that to be loved, he must prove himself. To be accepted, he must perform. To be respected, he must chase. And for a while, he played along. He smiled when he didn't want to. He stayed when he should have left. He gave chances he never got. He tolerated what broke him. But eventually, he snapped the script in half and wrote a new one. This one didn't require begging, didn't demand approval, didn't apologize for boundaries, didn't shrink to fit in. And the day he stopped chasing, he became unforgettable. Because you always remember the one who didn't need you, but chose you. You always remember the one who could have stayed, but didn't. You always remember the one who walked away when everyone else would have clung. People misunderstand him. They think he's distant, detached, disconnected. They don't see that it's not disconnection. It's direction. Every decision he makes moves him forward. He's not afraid to say goodbye, not afraid to be alone, not afraid to go without, because he knows the moment you fear being alone, you'll accept anyone, and he accepts only the aligned, not the convenient, not the available, not the loudest, only those who reflect the same clarity he fought to earn in silence. He's not heartless. In fact, he loves deeply. But he will not be dragged, will not be guilted, will not be convinced to stay in places where his soul withers. His love is a privilege, not a transaction. If you want access to it, you earn it. Not with words, with consistency, not with presence, with depth. Because he doesn't want more people in his life. He wants more truth. And if you can't bring that, he'd rather stand alone than be surrounded by noise. This man doesn't scroll endlessly through distractions. He doesn't engage in petty debates. He doesn't live in notifications. He lives in his discipline, in his vision, in the quiet pursuit of what others are too afraid to commit to. And that's why he doesn't chase, not because he thinks he's better, but because he knows exactly what he's becoming. And what he's becoming, that demands sacrifice, that demands focus, that demands the willingness to be misunderstood by people who were never meant to understand him. He's walked away from comfort, from shallow praise, from easy affection, and because of that, he's built depth. Now he doesn't just attract people, he moves them, not with charm, but with certainty, not with sweet words, but with sharp presence, not with trying, but with being. People ask him, "How did you become this way?" He doesn't answer, he doesn't explain, because the man who doesn't chase knows that some things are not meant to be said, only shown. You don't become this kind of man by accident. You become him by choice, by pain, by repetition, by letting go of who you were so you can become who you were meant to be. And now, he doesn't chase because he no longer has to, because when you don't chase, you move differently, you speak differently, you carry yourself with a kind of gravity that draws the right people in and repels the wrong ones without a single word. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. He doesn't want to be everything to everyone. He wants to be something rare to a few. He doesn't chase connection. He creates space for it and lets it come if it's meant to, because the right things will never require you to run after them. He knows that now, so he no longer lives on the edge of others' opinions. He stands firm in who he is, in what he values, in what he's building, and that's why they fear him, not because he's cruel, but because he's clear, not because he's cold, but because he's calm, not because he's heartless, but because his heart is no longer available to anything that doesn't speak in the language of truth. He's not the loudest, he's not the flashiest, he doesn't perform, he doesn't chase, but somehow, he's the one they can't stop watching, can't stop wondering about, can't stop remembering. Because real doesn't have to chase, real simply stands and lets the world adjust. He is not the man who chases, he is the one who builds in silence, and watches the world bend toward his gravity. If you made it here, it means something inside you is already changing, because this wasn't just a video, it was a mirror, and maybe, for the first time, you saw a version of yourself you hadn't met yet, a version that no longer chases, a version that doesn't beg, a version that simply becomes. Now the question is simple. Will you go back to the noise, or will you choose to build in silence? You don't need to chase anymore, not people, not approval, not even success. Because the moment you stop chasing, you give the world only two choices: align with your vision, or be left behind. So if this message struck something deep, don't let it fade like every other video you've watched. Let it mark the beginning of something permanent. Hit subscribe, not because you're following, but because you found a place that finally speaks your language. Here, we don't sell hope. We build power, quietly, deliberately, unapologetically. Turn on notifications, because the next video will meet you at the edge of who you are and push you deeper into who you're becoming. This is a movement, a mindset, and if you're here, you were never meant to stay average. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, not to impress, but to declare. What part of this video exposed your old self? What line forced you to rethink how you've been showing up? Write it down. Not for me, for you. Because when you write, you remember. And when you remember, you act. Finally, send this to the man who needs it, your friend, your brother, or even your past self, the one who's still chasing, still shrinking, still searching. He won't understand it at first, but something in him will shift. This is how it starts. Not with noise, not with bravado, but with clarity, with the quiet decision to stop chasing and start becoming the man they can't forget. Subscribe, comment, share, but more than anything, embody, because the world isn't changed by what you watch, it's changed by what you become. And if you felt this, you're already on your way.